Okay, welcome to our weekday text gathering. Today is day 169 in the Circle's text reading calendar, and we are studying chapter 13, section 4, the two emotions. This is one of those sections where you can read it and then wonder what it is that you just read, so I'm glad that we are covering it today. There is a lot here. There's a few different themes, but in the interest of time, we are going to focus on shadow figures because it's an important topic in the course that doesn't get enough attention, while the title of the section, The Two Emotions, Love and Fear, tends to get a lot of coverage in course circles. As for announcements, if you are watching the recording of this because you could not get onto the gathering live, please accept our sincerest apologies. We are having issues with Zoom. They have kicked us back into an old setting where we can only have 100 people in our meetings, and we're trying to address it. As for other announcements, I feel I should remind everyone that our gatherings will be ending on Friday. The daily text gatherings will be ending on Friday. So many of you have said in the chat that you want to do something special on Friday, so I've had my wheels turning about what that could be. And if you have any ideas, please feel free to put them in the chat, but I definitely agree we should be doing something special on Friday to celebrate the way in which we have gone through this time together. And as we've been saying, we will continue to have some sort of daily programming as we move forward, both in course companions and outside of course companions. So, okay, with that, we will go ahead and get into our prayer today. We are continuing our memorization or attempted memorization of lesson 232. And so if you would, close your eyes with me. Take a deep breath. And bow your head in prayer. Be in my mind, my Father, through the day. Be in my mind, my Father, when I wake, and shine on me throughout the day today. Let every minute be a time in which I dwell with you, and let me not forget my hourly thanksgiving that you have remained with me and always will be there to hear my call to you and answer me. As evening comes, let all my thoughts be still of you and of your love. And let me sleep, sure of my safety, certain of your care, and happily aware I am your son. Amen.
Amen. Okay, well, before I dive into the handout, I think I need to do a bit of prefacing. This section is very hard-hitting. The subject of shadow figures and what he's saying about shadow figures is very sobering. And he's trying to hit us hard in this section. There's a certain thing that the Course does that if you've been with the Course long enough, I think you'll recognize what I'm saying. It tries to, I mean, the term that comes to my mind is not the right term, but going back to my schoolhood days, I think about he's trying to gross us out. He's trying to have us look at something about our ego, our current mindset, and have us think, oh, I don't want that. Now that I see that, I just don't want it. And so he wants to evoke a strong reaction in us so that we say, I'm done with this. I don't want it anymore. And sometimes it takes that. If you've wrestled with an addiction, you know that it takes the sight of what it has done to your life very often before you say, this is not for me. I won't have this anymore. So with that as preface, why don't we dive into the handout? Oh, I need to share my screen. Why don't we make sure we get this by Friday? Okay, thanks. Okay, so to set this up, I want to talk for just a minute about insanity. Think about what the word means. Insanity means living in a private world where you're out of touch with reality. That's what we mean by the word insanity, I think. If you look up definitions, more formal ones, they sort of dance around the concept of reality. But in common parlance, that's what we mean. You've had a break with reality. Okay, you live in your own private mental bubble, your own private world, which bears no resemblance to the actual world. Now, the Course is constantly saying that we're insane, right? We've all seen it say that. And for a long time, I thought it meant, oh, okay, so I've had a break with like transcendental reality. I'm insane in the sense that I'm out of touch with true reality. But on the level of this world, right, I'm sane, we're all sane. So we have a metaphysical insanity, not a normal, conventional insanity. So that's just as a way of setting up what's to follow. Okay, here are the points that I want to focus on from this section. We people our world with figures from our individual past called shadow figures. And here's the line. Each one peoples his world with figures from his individual past. And it is because of this that private worlds do differ. So the idea is we're carrying around in our mind these figures from our past, particular people. Now, this section doesn't say why certain people, why we're carrying them. It's just talking about the fact that there are people we do this with. Elsewhere in the Course, it comes through that it's essentially the people, well, I guess you could say this based on the previous section, yesterday's section, is people we feel hurt by, okay? People who we feel did not give us the love that we wanted from them. So we can imagine, if that's the definition, we can imagine what a long list of people we're probably carrying around. Okay, next category. These figures are not true. They are one-sided caricatures. I used to say that shadow figures are people from our past, but that's not really the case. Look at what this says in paragraph 2. But the figures that he sees were never real, for they are made up only of his reactions to his brothers and do not include their reactions to him. So think about that. I didn't appreciate this line for a long time. Think about this. When you think of someone from your past, critical person who did not give you the love you wanted, who left you feeling in many ways hurt, that image you have of that person, doesn't it just include all the reactions you had to him or her, all the emotions you felt being on the receiving end? Does your picture include all the things they were feeling on their end, being on the receiving end of your behavior? I think we can safely say no, it doesn't. So does that mean that your picture is whole and true and balanced and fair? No, it's a one-sided caricature. It's a self-serving caricature. And the last sentence says, therefore, he does not see that he has made them and that they are not whole. How can they be whole when they're lacking, half of the whole equation? Okay, so we're carrying these mental figures around from our past. They're one-sided caricatures. And then we come to the next category. We
Hey, Robert,
focus.
just
Yeah.
a point of clarification. What if you have someone whose behaviors you're carrying around and you're looking at the person, but you're seeing maybe the behaviors of someone else? Does that count as a shadow figure if it's Does it count as a shadow figure if it is someone else? What if it's the person and it's their behaviors that you keep seeing instead of the person in front
Well,
of you? Like, what
you
is
know,
the actual
I think
figure?
I think that's worth discussing, but I feel like just the concept is so important to get in itself. Maybe we can hang off with the extra complexities that might trip us up for the moment. So maybe we
Okay.
can return to that. But I just feel like the concept itself is, it's hard enough to get. Okay. So we focus only on those individuals that remind us of our shadow figures. And that's said directly in this line, if you catch it. For they, meaning us, they see only those who remind them of these images, and it is to them that they relate. So it's as if I had a friend who was a psychologist, and he would say, if you have, someone in a crowd who has been abused, and there is a room full of 100 people, somehow they'll find the abuser in that crowd. They'll like zero in. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's fair. But the point is there is a way in which we gravitate to certain people and not to others. And it's like the others we don't even see. It's like they aren't there. Why do we do that? What he's saying here is we do it because they remind us of our shadow figures. Why is it that certain people stand out to us? Is it for all the reasons that we would give? Maybe it's not. Maybe there's something much deeper and more hidden going on that identifies that person to our unconscious as the one. Now, I want to include this quote from Harville Hendricks. He's very old now, but he's best-selling author, therapist, been on Oprah. His book, Getting the Love You Want, was a New York Times bestseller. He's been around for a lot of years. And this concept of his is very similar to shadow figures in the Course. I don't really think that this concept in the Course it's not unique. But it's helpful to see somebody else who's not familiar with the Course say something very similar. Okay. He's talking here about his theory of romantic attraction. Why do certain people attract us and others don't, who on any sort of scoring system would score equally well? And here's what he says. I've discovered from years of theoretical research and clinical observation that we are each looking for someone who has the predominant character traits of the people who raised us. Now, I don't think the Course would confine it to our parents. Okay, they've got to be top of the list on the average list, but I don't think the Course would confine it to our parents. The Course wouldn't do that. From my observations of thousands of couples that have stated that what they want from their partners, I have concluded that it is a compelling need to heal old childhood wounds. He says Freud said it was because you just feel compelled to repeat the past. He says it's a compelling need to heal old childhood wounds. The ultimate reason you fell in love with your mate is not that he or she was young and attractive, had an impressive job, had a point value equal to yours, or had a kind disposition. You fell in love because your old brain, this is the more primitive part of your brain, had your partner confused with your parents. Your old brain believed that it had finally found the ideal candidate to make up for the psychological and emotional damage you experienced in childhood. Now, if we just broaden it beyond parents, then the courses, and broaden it beyond romantic partners as well. The Course would not confine it to romantic partners, that's for sure. So if we broaden the whole concept out and just keep the essence of it, we get what the Course is saying. Okay, and it gets worse. We are interacting with these figures rather than the actual people in front of us. And here's what the Course says. Thus do they, referring to us, communicate with those who are not there. And it is they, those who aren't there, who answer. And no one hears their answer, save him who called upon them. And he alone believes they answered him. Projection makes perception. That's one of two references or two statements of that idea or that quote. And you cannot see beyond it. So we're just seeing our projections. Again and again have men attacked each other because they saw in the other a shadow figure in their private world. So have you ever, from my standpoint, this often comes out in arguments. Have you ever thought, who are you talking to? And who did you just hear say what I said? Like, that's not what I said. And why are you saying that to me? That makes no sense being addressed to me. Have you ever had that experience? He's saying that we're all talking to people who are not there. And when the people who are there talk to us, we hear the people who aren't there speaking to us. And then we responded. And do you see what he's saying? He's saying we're in relationship, not with the people in front of us. We're in relationship with those images in our heads. And that builds up to this preliminary conclusion. We are quite literally insane. And here's the part that I think is hardest for us to look at. But he lays it on thick because he wants to have a certain shock value associated with this. As you look with open eyes upon your world, it must occur to you that you have withdrawn into insanity. For you see what is not there, and hear what is soundless, the shadow figures. You communicate with no one, and you are as isolated from reality as if you were alone in all the universe. In your madness, you overlook reality completely, and you see only your split mind everywhere you look. God calls to you, and you do not hear, for you are preoccupied with your own voice. And the vision of Christ is not in your sight, for you look upon yourself alone. Obviously, the shadow figures, they're just images in your head. They're figures in your mind. If you're seeing only them, you're looking upon yourself alone. What he's saying here is a direct refutation of my old idea that we are only metaphysically insane. We're not insane in the normal sense. He's saying, in the normal sense, you're insane. You're talking to people who aren't there. You're hearing people who aren't there talk to you. This is depressing, but it explains so much. It explains all of our communication breakdown. It explains why you can be in the same room and yet a world apart. It explains why we often can't make ourselves heard and why people can't make themselves heard by us. It explains why our world is so fragmented. It explains why relationships are so hard. It explains so much. So the exercise will ask us to consider this on a personal level. But there's hope. He says, but we can learn that this is insanity and look beyond it. You who know not what you do can learn what insanity is and look beyond it. It is given you to learn how to deny insanity and come forth from your private world in peace. For we are in our own private world, just as we said at the beginning. We can leave our private worlds and draw others from their private worlds. He says, you will love them, and by drawing nigh unto them, our brothers, you will draw them to yourself, perceiving them as witnesses to your reality, which you share with God. For I am with them, as I am with you, and we will draw them from their private worlds. So imagine being one who steps out of your private world, leaves this condition, and then starts drawing others from their private worlds. But to do that, we have to sort of let that gross out factor occur in us, where we say, oh God, I don't want that anymore. Okay, so I know we're a bit late in our time here. So Emily, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I'd like to ask my question again.
You've been saving that this whole time, haven't you?
Well, I think I imagine I'm not the only one with it. Is the shadow figure only the behavior from someone else that you're putting onto the person that you're speaking with in the present? Or can the shadow figure also be that person's past behavior that you're putting on them in the present?
Okay. Here's what I'll say. Remember, actually, I didn't have a good answer for it then. That wasn't going to be confusing, but I've got, I think, a pretty good one now. So it's good that we delayed it. That was the perfect thing. Anyway, what the shadow figure is not their past behavior, right? The shadow figure is your one-sided caricature of their past. It's not true, right? So it's
But
as
I
we
guess
saw.
what I'm trying to draw out though is it, let's say that you got hurt by, let's say you got abandoned by your father, right? And you're putting that onto everyone that's in front of you,
Including your father.
or yeah, but
Right.
okay,
But
so
it works either way. It's kind of, if you realize the shadow figure is not the person, it's irrelevant whether the person in front of you is that person or is somebody else, because the shadow figure you put on them is this subjective
it's a mental
caricature
construct, yeah.
in your head. So you can put a shadow figure you fashioned out of your father's past on your father, and it's just as crazy as putting it on somebody else.
Got
This is
it.
not him.
That is very helpful actually, because you can actually put an amalgamation of different behaviors of different people onto the
And
person
I
who's in
think we
front of
do
you.
that.
Right.
I mean, and
And
it's
that's what
teachers.
spins us off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's teachers, it's loves early in our life, it's kids from our class and school. I mean, it's, all kinds of people.
Yeah. Okay.
But
So
parents obviously are top of the list.
we'll get through a couple of questions, or do you want to go into the exercise
Let's
first?
get through some questions because we started kind of late and it feels not fair to do the questions
Okay.
till later.
Donna, I will do the old style prayers on Friday, maybe tomorrow too.
I love 232, but I actually miss those other ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll make a point to do that. Sherry's asking, are you still publishing commentary of the text lessons? Yes, those commentaries appear in the Course Companions program, Sherry. You can email info@circleofa.org and find out how you can get access to those.
Yeah. Course Companions is just continuing. And actually, we've got more going on there now as of July 1st.
Yes, and you can always find these recordings of all of the text gatherings at circleofa.org/text gathering too. You can find them at this gnarly link that Joe posted, which is the same link as circleofa.org/text gatherings, but text gatherings is the easier way to get there. Samantha is asking, are shadow figures only negative? Could it be someone we still need for a lesson? Can shadow figures ever be positive?
I don't know. What he talks about is what Harville Hendricks talks about, where there's something where we feel wounded by that person, whether we were or we're not. And we're trying to, in some way, have the present person make up for it. That's how the Course talks.
Okay. There's a lot of comments. Like Jackie says, I married my mom the first 2 times and my dad the third time. Jeremy says
That's
when I
good.
turned
That's
40, I
good,
opened my
Jackie.
mouth. Jeremy says when I turned 40, I opened my mouth and my father fell out. Yeah, Freud said if it's not one thing, it's your mother.
Freud said that? Sounds like Groucho
I
Marx.
think I think Freud did say that actually.
Really?
Okay. Jackie, okay, this is good. Jackie says this explains why I have felt so isolated. That is key. And it
Yeah.
also explains why we feel isolated even in conversation with other people. I mean, as
Yeah.
you were saying, Robert, how many times have we been in discussions or they elevate to arguments at some point when the other person is just projecting all of their stuff on you that isn't even true, and vice versa, and that's what
And
causes
they
me.
have the temerity to say that you're doing that to them.
And I have to say that I always blamed them that I felt isolated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. That was tongue in cheek, Emily, by the way. What I said.
John says,
And just before you say that, the isolation's really key. I forget who said that, but
Jackie.
Samantha or Jackie. Okay, Jackie. Because that's the whole idea of insanity, is that you're alone in your private world.
What's the line in the chorus? Under the same roof that shelters neither?
And yeah, under a common roof that shelters neither, in the same room and yet a world
World
apart.
apart. That
Yeah.
in the same room and yet a world apart. I think a
God,
lot of us
who has
feel.
not had that experience?
So, before we get to the exercise, John is saying, how do we see the shadow figures for what they are and let them go?
Well, I think we need to forgive the people and realize they are not the shadow figures. And we need to forgive the people in front of us and realize they're not the projection of the shadow figures. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so let's do this exercise. And it'll help if you close your eyes. I'm going to ask you to consider a series of thoughts, and then we'll repeat a couple of lines. Have you ever noticed that on an emotional level, you relate to a certain person as if they were a significant person from your past? I think most of us have. Can you consider that when you interact with this person in the present, on an emotional level, you're interacting with the past person? Is that possible? That you are speaking to the past person or your image of them and hearing that past person respond. Now, can you consider that that is going on across the board in all your relationships? Wouldn't that mean that you have withdrawn into a private mental world? That you have withdrawn into insanity? Feeling shock and recoil at this is a good thing. For you can decide that this is simply not acceptable. You can decide you're fed up with this condition. So say to yourself, I will deny insanity and come forth from my private world in peace. I will deny insanity and come forth from my private world in peace. and then add, and when I have done so, Jesus and I will draw my brothers from their private worlds. And when I have done so, Jesus and I will draw my brothers from their private worlds. All right. Amen.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today in
We
our
don't have
text
any
gathering.
pressing.
Well, Lynn is saying, so this is solely our screen. Oh, it just disappeared. Sorry, it just disappeared underneath all of the existing chat. This is solely our screenplay of the unfolding movie of our life until we are interrupted in perception.
I guess it's our own private screenplay that we're putting on the actual world out there.
Donna says, how could I possibly include someone else's feelings and impressions of me and my image of them, since I cannot actually know what they feel and think?
Well, the thing is, we aren't that interested, right? It just doesn't stack up in our mind. If we really were interested, we probably could find out and could have been finding out all along the way.
Yeah, it's as you were doing that exercise, I was thinking about the Byron Katie's The Work is really popular, and one of the questions in the 4 questions that she asks is it true? At least that's my understanding, and the idea is that you get down to what is actually true and then you go from there. But if your version of what's true is completely distorted from all of these shadow figures that you have swimming around, and how would you know what's true?
What's true?
And so
Yeah.
you can't even have the foundation of a sane conversation, but you'll tell yourself that what's in your head is true.
Yeah, and it's your whole head is so lopsided, you don't know.
Mm-hmm. You don't know, but you think it's true, and then you proceed from there. Yeah. So
One of the things that really helped me appreciate that line about made up of only your reactions to them is near-death experiences, where people have a life review and they get to experience what was going on the other side in the other person, and it's always a revelation, because we're just not that concerned or in touch with what's going on with them.
So Jenny says that she's going to have to re-listen to this because she's still a little confused, and I don't want to leave anyone a little confused. Can you just break this down in the simplest way possible for all of us who may be thinking, okay, I kind of get it, but not really?
Okay, I'll give it a shot. It does take some kind of getting used to and living with. So the idea is there were individuals from our past who we didn't get what we wanted from. Okay, and we carry around our image of them. And then, as later sections will say, to sort of get what we wanted from them, we search for people who remind us of them. And we focus on those people and attend to those people. And then as we relate to those people in the present, we project onto them the image of the past people. Okay. And so it's like we put a mask on them of a certain past person. And like you say, it can be a collection, I'm sure. And then we speak to the mask, not them. And when they talk, we hear the mask talking back at us and interpret what they say as if it was the mask saying it. And the Course is saying that's true in all of our relationships and interactions. So everyone's wearing those masks of those shadow figures. And that's what we're interacting with, not the people in front of us.
And it's an interesting point in there that we search for these relationships versus constantly feeling at the effect of the people who come into our lives and the way that they treat us. So the Course is saying that we actually hunt for these people.
Yes. And in chapter 17, section 3, which is in the CE is called Shadow Figures, basically it puts this forth as the Course's theory of romantic attraction, kind of like Harville Hendricks.
Okay. We're scared.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Okay. Have a good day.
I'm just like, I don't mean to leave you like that, but this is where we are. So we'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.